When you were in your near-death experience, you said that there was no difference between what you were and what you were experiencing, and you had infinite knowledge. There was nothing that was unknown. So now in that space, you have this realization, you have this experience. And most people who have a near death experience don't get to bring all of that back with them. So they come back and they become more human. But I know one of the things that's happened to you is that you've remembered more and more things over time as you've evolved. So will you share with us some of the knowledge that you brought back that people might not be familiar with?
Well, first of all, and this is based on everything that I have said and that I'll say moving forward, the only thing that I know without a shadow of a doubt is that
My guest today is Zackary Price, who was involved in a car accident at the age of 12 where he had a near death experience. And over time, these memories have increased, and the realness of this experience has also increased. So, Zach, welcome. I'm so excited to talk to you today.
all right, thank you very much for having me, Lori.
You're welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So,
Mm.
why don't we start with your near death
It
experience?
was in 98. I just turned 38 few months ago. So, yeah.
Okay.
So I was 12 years old. I just turned 12, and I remember getting up that morning, getting ready, and we were running late. And I was in this, I remember that it was wet that morning, and I was in the sixth grade, and my sister was in the fourth grade. I have a sister, I have a half sister, and my mother was taking my sister and I to school. Uh, and my sister had, I only recently discovered this, but then I realized, oh God, that's true. That did happen. That my sister had bought a bunch of Valentine's Day cards for her class, and she was going to exchange them with, you know how kids do in elementary school, they'll give, everyone will bring a Valentine's Day card and then
Of
they'll
course.
exchange them with their friends. Yeah. So, and then I
It's the
remember
highlight of
also,
a girl's life, by the way, Zachary.
mm,
It's a highlight of a girl's elementary school life.
is that so? Really? Really?
Seriously,
Okay, cool.
you would look forward to Valentine's Day. Yeah, so this is probably a big deal for her that this happened
Well,
on that
she's
day.
2 years younger than me, so she was in the fourth grade. So maybe it was, maybe it was the highlight of her life at that time. I don't know. But she had all these cards, and she was going to take them to school, and she was going to give them to her friends. So she had forgotten them at home. And then, as I said, I remembered that I had forgotten my homework as well. So it's like, oh God, I remember and I remember it was math homework. And like I struggle. I've always struggled with math. I love math. I love it. I'm terrible at it. But so when my mom turned around to go home, to go back to the house, the car flipped, and I remember everything happening in slow motion. And then I remembered it going black. And what I experienced then, there are literally no words to describe. There are literally no words. I've been working for 26 years to finally find the right vocabulary to articulate what I experienced, but there are no words. Um, First of all, what I experienced wasn't linear, like so there because there wasn't time. And so here we have time, we exist in time, right? This is our life, right? Everything happens in time, so all we know is time. But there's no time, so it's everything was happening at once, and so we can't really comprehend that. But there was a beauty unlike anything that I've ever experienced before in my life. There was a love, a type of love that I've never experienced in my life. In fact, in this place, there were no opposites. There was no opposite to love there. There was no opposite to beauty there. In fact, it was the purest form of what beauty is, what the essence of beauty is. The only words that remotely come close to this, and I didn't coin this phrase, but it makes sense to use this phrase to describe about it, is the quintessence of beauty. It is the essence of what beauty is. And also, there was no difference there. There was no difference between, and so we can't really comprehend this in the way that we communicate and that we exist here. There was no difference between noun and verb. See, we think those are two completely different things, but there's no difference between those. There was no difference between what I was and what I was experiencing. There was no difference between, as I said, subject and object. There was and also there was a knowing, unlike anything I've ever experienced before in my life. There was nothing that was not known. So the love and the beauty that I was experiencing was, I understood that's what I was, that's what I am. And so when I came out of my coma, I was in the coma for, well, I didn't tell you I was in a coma, but now I'm going to tell you I was in a coma for about a month. I was in the hospital for about 3 months. And I had a lacerated liver, a lacerated colon, bilateral pneumothorax, which means both of your lungs collapse. I had a fractured L2 vertebrae, and I was in a coma for a month. And as I said, when I was in the coma, I died. And I actually died in the CT scanner when they were scanning my brain to see what damage had been done. And I had a contusion on my prefrontal cortex. I still have brain damage today, but you couldn't tell. But after I came out of my coma, I came out, and I went home. They gave me about a 20% chance of survival, with about a 90% chance that if I did survive, that I would be in a vegetative state for the rest of my life. And because of the love and support and nurturing that my grandmother gave me at that point in my life, she adopted me. She actually stayed with me while I was in the hospital. And she adopted me after, I got out, and she, saw me through all my healing and everything. And if it weren't for her, I wouldn't be talking to you now. And I owe everything I am now to her. And so when we got home, uh, I come from a really secular family. Like, no one in my family has ever gone to church, talked about religious or spiritual things in any way. And I started going to church, but it was more so not for any religious fervor or anything, but I was looking for answers, to someone to explain to me what I experienced when I died. And I went to a bunch of different churches, a bunch of different denominations, and nobody was able to give me something they had actually experienced. That's something that they actually knew about, that they didn't just read in a book somewhere. And so as time has gone by, things will happen in life, and it's almost like deja vu. Like I'll be standing somewhere, or you know what deja vu feels like. You're just like, oh, I've experienced that before, right? But it wasn't just that. It's almost like, hey, this is pointing to something that you you need to learn how to express. And so graduated high school. I went to, I traveled, I studied a lot of things. I have 3 degrees now, and that took a long time to get. But I spent all those years, all of my 20s, traveling up and down the Eastern Seaboard. And when I moved to New York, which is where I spent about 4 years of my life, I studied up there. I encountered Eastern teachings. And when I encountered these Eastern teachings, like Buddhism and Hinduism and Taoism, it rang true for me. And it was like those religions were able to point, to express to me, to explain to me what I experienced more than any Western religion ever did, was ever able to. But after I studied all that, and after I got into the flow of, religious studies and my line of work that I'm in now, I started to see that these truths that were in these Eastern teachings are actually spoken about in Western teachings, in Christianity and Islam and Judaism. They're there. They're not talked about in the same way. And yeah, so yeah, well, where do we go from here? That's so
Well, I have, but thank you.
that's
Well,
some so I guess before we go any further, let me say
yeah.
this. So in 2011, my grandmother, the woman who adopted me, was diagnosed with nasopharyngeal cancer. And I don't think you know about this about me because I haven't really spoken a lot about it. But so she was diagnosed in 2011. I was living in Vermont at the time. And about in 2012, the following year, because of the treatments that she was going through, the chemotherapy, the radiation that she was having to undergo, she lost over half of her body weight. She lost her teeth. She couldn't eat, and she fell into a deep depression and she attempted suicide. And when I heard about this, when I found out about it, I dropped everything I was doing when I was in Vermont, and I moved home and I became a live-in caregiver for her until she passed away in 2016. Now, when I moved back home, she was so feeble that she couldn't even stand up on her own. She couldn't go to the bathroom on her own. She couldn't do anything on her own. I literally had to pick her up and take her to the bathroom. I had to help her do everything and help her to clean up, to get her clothes back on and take her back to her chair. And she was like that for about a while when I first got there, but eventually she ended up getting stronger. And time passed. I think about several months passed, and after one particularly difficult day, I was exhausted after helping her. And she stayed, like we stayed across the hall from each other. That way, if she needed me at night, she could say my name really loudly, and I could get up and I could go help her. And when I first got there, it was like 6 times every night I'd have to get up and help her to the bathroom because she was on fluids, but after one particularly difficult day, I remember falling asleep, and I had a dream, the most vivid dream that I've ever had in my life. I remember that I was standing under a nighttime sky, and this sky was full of stars. I was standing like in an open field, an open plain, looking up at the sky, and the sky was full of stars. And it was more full of stars than I had ever seen a sky full of stars. In fact, have you ever seen one of those pictures from like the James Webb telescope
Yes.
or the Hubble Space Telescope, and there will be so many stars in the picture it just doesn't look real. Well, that's what it looked like. And but that's not what was unique about it. What was unique about it was that all of these stars were blinking, and they were blinking in unison. And it was almost like Morse code or something, like they were saying something. Now, I don't read Morse code. I don't understand what that is, but I knew that it felt like someone was saying something to me. And I remember that I was standing there for it's felt like a long time. And I heard a voice in my ear say the word Abwon, Abwon. And I thought there was someone laying in bed with me who got in my ear and woke me up. It felt like someone literally said those words in my ear and it woke me up. And I was wide awake. And it was like I was racing on caffeine or something. I was just super wide awake. Have you ever woken up like that before? Woken up just really wide
Yes.
awake, and it
Yes.
felt like I'd been awake for hours. And so I said, "What was
Like
that?"
almost like you wake up almost like an adrenaline rush.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. And
Yeah.
so I woke up and I said, "What was that?" And so I took my computer that was on my bedside table and I opened it up and I typed in the word in Google, Abwon, Abwon. And it took me to a place called the Abwon Network. And as it turns out, Abwon is the first word in the Aramaic version of the Lord's Prayer. So I took it upon myself and I learned that prayer in the original Aramaic. And a lot has happened because of this, but I just actually finished my master's degree in theology, and my master's thesis was on the Lord's Prayer in the original Aramaic. And that's where it came from. That's how it came to me. That's what got me on that topic. And I was doing that while I was learning it while my grandmother was in the process of dying. And I remember the day she died. I've never talked about this in any of the other interviews I've done.
Well,
So,
I appreciate you sharing this.
well, when she died, I remember that, I spent that her last night. I slept on the couch and she slept in the hospital bed in the living room. And I slept next to her the uh the final night of her life. And I woke up in the morning and the first thing that happened was she passed away. And I held her hand as she passed away. And she saved my life. And I was fortunate enough to be able to see her through the end of hers. And it was one of the greatest privileges of my life. And so that has actually got me into the line of work that I do now. I'm a clinical chaplain by trade, and I'm a teacher. So if you don't know what a clinical chaplain is, I'll tell you. So most people know what a chaplain is, but a clinical chaplain is a chaplain that works in the healthcare setting. Right? So what my function is I work with people who are either dying or have just gone through a traumatic event or they are processing through something really difficult. And I talk to them about their belief system, whatever that may be, whether it be Christian or Hindu or Buddhist or Muslim or atheist or agnostic. It could be anything. So my job is to talk to them and to take whatever model of belief they have, and I help them to use that framework to navigate through their experience of suffering and to establish a life-enhancing meaning on the other side of that journey. And so my work is literally helping people to find wholeness when they've experienced trauma. And so, yeah, so I owe all that to my grandmother, who I wouldn't be doing this work first of all, if I hadn't died. And secondly, if I hadn't gone to be the caregiver for her as she was passing away. And so, yeah, that was probably one of the most difficult things I remember going through in life is losing her. But it was one of the greatest gifts I got because it got me into the line of work that I do now. And
Wow.
yeah,
That's
so
it. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I know it takes a lot to be vulnerable and share stories like that, but when you share something like this, it helps other people. And I just feel your kindness and your gratitude and the
mm,
love that you had for your grandmother. I'm so sorry for your
mm.
loss.
Well, it's no, this is going to sound terrible to say, but I'm glad she's dead because she's not suffering anymore. And she
Yeah.
was really suffering there, especially there at the end.
Yeah.
But I remember when she died that day, she died that morning on April 15th of 2016. And so she died that morning. And when they came and got her body out of her house, I was standing there and they put her on the gurney. And as they were wheeling her out the door, like I was standing there in shock. And when the door closed, it felt like everything in life. There was this profound silence that settled. It was just, it was almost like dew settling in a really rapid way, just dew settling around me. It wasn't wet or anything, but it just felt like this stillness just fell upon everything. I, and it was then that, it's hard to put into words. It was this, I hear it now when I'm in a quiet space. It's almost like the sound, the silence becomes loud. It's almost like the silence has a texture to it. And I've come to find out Joel Goldsmith, I've come to find out, he talked about this. I don't know if you know who he was, but he was a spiritual teacher back in the middle of the 20th century. And he called it the thunder of silence. And that's exactly what it is. And I was calling it the thunder of silence before I came across his work. But it's almost like thunder. And I've come to find out, have you heard of the word Om in
Of
yoga?
course. An
That's
ohm
what
is
that is.
supposed to be,
The primordial
yes,
sound.
yes.
That is what I heard. And I hear it every time I'm in quiet now. Every time.
Wow.
And I remember that I heard it when I was a kid too, but through my teenage years, it kind of went away. But now I hear it when I'm in a quiet room or I go to especially when I go to a sacred place, I hear that. And it's almost like the atmosphere is thick and it's hard to describe it. Like every time I'm in a church or I hear that, and it's almost like not even just hearing it, it's feeling it. It's a visual thing. But I heard it in a very profound way when they took my grandmother's body out the door. And then that actually ignited the fuse to get me to where I am now. But so I have a lot more I could say, but questions?
Yes, I would. Oh, I'd like to start with your near-death experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
So you said something I've never, I listened to so many of these stories, so many of these experiences, Zachary, and you said something that really struck me. There was no opposite of love and no opposite of beauty. And the reason that strikes me is because as soon as you said it, it was a full body resonance of my
Hmm.
experiences on the other side.
Hmm.
I've used different words, and the words I have used is there is only love. But
Hmm.
I love how you said there is no opposite of love, because one of the things that I experienced was that there is nothing that could be there that was not love. And
Hmm.
it sounds like that was very much your experience also. So you're 12 years old, you're in this
Hmm.
household where you have no religious background. Did you know on some level that there was a presence or a unity to everything that was when you were in that space?
When in that state or before? Because when I was a kid, like I said, I remember hearing, like I never had any religious upbringing,
Yeah.
but I did hear this thunder of silence, this thunder
Oh,
behind the silence of every time
before.
I was
So
in
that was even
before.
before your
It
near
was
death.
before my near death experience. I remember laying in bed when I was a kid and I would just hear that. But as I
Oh.
became a teenager, it passed away. But then
Mhm.
it came back in a really powerful way the moment they took my grandmother, her body out the door.
Why do you
Um,
think you got it back?
I think that was kind of one of my favorite words. And if you read, I sent you an article called Becoming Who You Are. And I talk about this word in the article that I sent you. The word is alembic. And what an alembic is one of my favorite words. It is an alembic is a vessel that is used to purify alcohol.
Okay.
So our life, especially the difficult things that we go through, the traumas that we go through, if we approach them in the right way, can serve as the alembic of our enlightenment, of our finding our way back to God.
So
And
the vessel that transports us to that.
it is the vessel that purifies us. It helps us. So there is a story of you've heard of Michelangelo's David, haven't
Yes,
you?
of
Okay.
course.
So
Yes.
there is a story about Michelangelo and David. I don't know if you've ever heard it,
I have
but
not. Let's hear. I'd
okay.
love for you to share it if you don't mind.
So this will explain kind of what an alembic is
Okay.
and how it operates in our lives. So so one day Michelangelo was carving the statue of David, and he had done other pieces before this, and he was chiseling away, and one day, and somebody walked up behind him, and they said, "Excuse me, sir, how do you create such beauty with your work? How do you do that?" And Michelangelo said, "Stay there. I will actually meet me at the rock quarry. Meet me here, and we're going to go to the rock quarry where I get all my marble. I'd like to take you there, and I'll show you how I do it." And so the man was really excited, and he met Michelangelo there. He said, "I'm gonna learn how to do this like he does." And so he and Michelangelo walked to the rock quarry, And they get to the quarry, and Michelangelo points down into the where they get all the marble from. And he said, inside that marble there, you see the marble there? He said, yeah. And he said, well, inside that marble is an angel, and it is my job to set her free. And so what he meant when he said that was that David existed within the marble, and it was Michelangelo's job to carve away everything that was not David. So we exist within this type of marble in our lives, right? But the thing is that our perfection, our enlightenment, the essence of God that exists within us we are already whole and complete. Everything that we ever be, will be, exists now. But it's through the alembic of our lives, the pains that we go through, the trials that we go through, the struggles that we go through, that those pieces of us that don't belong are chipped away. And so life is a process of becoming who we are. And becoming isn't evolving into something new. It's unveiling what you've always been. And so that's one of the things that I came back understanding.
Is that similar to having an awakening, or under like
That is the
awakening and
process
understanding who you
that is
are?
the process of awakening.
Do you think that
Process
that's
of
a purpose for everybody on the planet, or
I
just
do.
certain people?
I do. I think it's
Everybody.
everybody. Okay, so
Okay. Tell me why you think that.
because okay, so are you familiar with Christian scripture?
A little bit. It's been a
Okay.
while.
Have you heard of the story of Moses?
Yes.
Okay. So do you know about the burning bush?
Yes. And isn't that the Arcadia tree that they had in that area?
Maybe.
The reason
So I
I'm
know we
asking is because somebody was just talking about this very recently and said
Mhm,
that in the Acadia tree is DMT. And
mhm.
people wonder if maybe he had an ineffable psychedelic experience that caused him to leave his body and have that experience he came back with.
Maybe he did. That's a possibility. Maybe he did. But you know the story. And so he
Yeah.
goes to the burning. He loses the sheep. He's searching for the sheep. He finds the sheep. But when he finds the sheep, he sees this bush that's on fire. And there's a voice that comes from the bush and it's talking to him. And Moses is freaked out. And he said, who am I talking to? Who is this is speaking to me? And the bush says, I'm, the God of, um, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I'm the God of your forefathers. And he said, and then he says, go set your people free. And Moses finally gives in, and he said, who do I say sent me? Who gives me the authority to do this? You know what the bush says?
Did he
Do you
say
remember?
I am the I am?
The bush said, I am. I am that I am. That is my name now and for all future generations. Now the name of God is I am. It's interesting to me, no matter who you are, no matter what you believe, no matter where you're from, no matter what you're back, no matter anything, everybody, when they introduce themselves to another person, we say the name of God before we even say our own name. When I met you, I said, hi, I'm Zach. You said, hi, I am Lori, right?
Right.
So we said the name of God before we even said our own name.
I love that. You're the only person I've ever heard say this before.
So, but it's true. And it says in Christian scripture, like I'm not Christian particularly, but it says in Christian scripture that, God is closer to you than your very breath.
Hmm.
It talks about that. And what is closer to you than your very sense of being? And, God, the word I am is, it means I be, means I being, present tense. In being, I am is actually redundant. It's I being, right? So just being, right? So being is God is the being. God is being itself. It is the ground of our existence, the ground of being. In fact, I am a human being, and so are you. I could talk about this. There's so much I could say about this, but life is not, so is this, everyone is this is your pure essence of being, all of us, is this I am, right? And so, and this light is wanting to get out, is wanting to express itself. And so this I am, this being, it is manifests as, well, this kind of goes off on another topic, but love, right? And love, from what I understand, as part of my own near-death experience, we think of love as just this positive thing, but love really isn't positive or negative. It simply is the reality of relationship between beings, between individual expressions of being. It is the reality of relationship, right? So this relationship can be colored in a negative way, which we would call fear or hate, which that colors the relationship we have, right? That's the prism we're seeing the world through. Or that relationship could be colored with the hues of positivity, you know, romantic love, familial love, But regardless of what it doesn't matter what form that relationship takes, it is the basis of it is this reality of relationship. And it is, yeah. So I'll pause there for a while and you can ask questions and talk, but there's so much more I could say, but
Yes, no, this is great. I think that this is really helping people to understand a little bit more about what we are, to change the perception of what we've been taught to believe that really doesn't match up with when you've been on the other side. So one
well,
of the
could I
things,
say
yeah,
one
oh,
more
sure,
thing in regard to that?
please,
Okay, so
yes.
this love that is
Yeah.
the basis of our relationship with one another.
Hmm.
That is the foundation of who and what we are, in Christian scripture, because I'm in the West, so I've learned to speak this religion is just a language that we use to talk about things that can't really be talked about,
Hmm.
right? So if you're talking about the infinite or the eternal and you're in the East and like you're in China or somewhere, you're gonna have to use the language of Buddhism or the language of Confucianism or Taoism to talk about that eternal state. If you go to Afghanistan, more than likely you're going to have to use the Islamic prism, right? But all it is, it's a language that we use to talk about things. So I think all religion is a language
Hmm.
because we're all talking about the same thing, right? If I'm standing on this side of a tree and you're standing on that side of the tree, we're both looking at the same tree, but we're going to talk about it in different ways. Does that make sense?
Of course,
Um,
yeah, it does.
but this reality of love, which is the basis of what and who we are, is, so do you have husband, pets, kids? Do you have, what relationships do
I
you have in
have
your
I've
life?
had all of those. I've had all of
Okay.
those.
So what
Yes.
do you have right now?
I have
Relationships.
my kids.
Your
I
kids.
have
Okay.
my dog that I'm in love with,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I have past
Okay.
relationship with my former husband. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So your kids, why do
Mhm.
you love your kids?
Because they are.
Okay. So, but why do you love your kids? Why do you love them? Why do you love your mom?
I think because there isn't anything outside of love, Zachary.
Okay. Okay. All right. So the reason we love, and the reason you're saying that, the reason we love anybody is the same reason that we find things beautiful, because we can't help it.
Hmm.
The commandment that Jesus gave in Christian scripture, the only one he gave was love one another
Hmm.
as I've loved you. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's the only real commandment he gave. That wasn't really a commandment as much as it is a state of fact. We can't help but love each other. Now we can put up blocks, right? We can say, "Oh no, no, I'm not going to do that."
Because you
So,
have a free will choice. Yeah.
right. So it was a statement of fact. So a baby, look at a baby. When they come out, they love naturally. They can't help it. That's their natural state, right? When an animal, look at your dogs, they probably love you because you feed them and you you give them a lot of things, but but fundamentally, all animals love everyone because they can't help it. That's their natural state. Until they're taught not to, they will love unconditionally. And so we love because we can't help it.
Hmm.
Now, if we can feel, if we're gonna treat anyone other than love, it's because of fear, anxiety, uncertainty, anger, or anger. Um, but the foundation of it is love. There is only love. There is only God. That's when Jeff Mara interviewed me. He said, "Do you have a last thing that you would like to say?" And I said, "Well, there is no death. Life is eternal. There is only life. There is only God." And yeah, so
Nothing outside of that. All right. When you were in your near-death experience, you said that there was no difference between what you were and what you were experiencing, and you had infinite knowledge. There was nothing that was unknown. So now in that space, you have this realization, you have this experience. And most people who have a near-death experience don't get to bring all of that back with them. So they come back and they become more human. But I know one of the things that's happened to you is that you've remembered more and more things over time as you've evolved. Maybe your vibration has gotten higher and you're able to absorb some of those concepts where you couldn't have before. So will you
mhm.
share with us some of the knowledge that you brought back that people might not be familiar with?
Well, first of all, and this is based on everything that I have said and that I'll say moving forward, the only thing that I know without a shadow of a doubt is that God is. And when I say the word God, I don't mean it in a religious way at all. In fact, I'm probably one of the least religious people you'll ever meet.
Which
You
is
wouldn't
funny
think
coming
that.
from a clinical
Yeah,
register,
but
right?
religion has everything to do with God, but God has nothing to do with religion. God is the reality, the ground of our being. God is the awareness that is gazing out from behind your eyes. It is the I am presence that is gazing out behind mine. And everything exists within God. Everything does.
That was
That is,
Zachary, that was my experience also on the other
Mhm,
side. There
mhm.
was nothing outside of source.
Now we can believe things, but oftentimes people, especially when I talk to, it's politics and religion. People tell me don't talk about politics and religion. I can't talk about politics, but I can talk about religion all day because I understand that when people are talking to me about religion, their religious beliefs, I understand that's the prism they're experiencing God through. There's S of life through, right? That is the language they're using. They're still expressing these ideas, but yeah, everything that we experience is an expression of something deeper. And I guess what I mean when I say that is as I've gotten older, and I remember that immediately after I came out of my coma, I remember experiencing the world this way, but it's like soon things started to close in again, and then I had to relearn it, right? It's almost like there is a vitality, a beauty that is expressed through every person you meet. And so I've gotten to the point where when I meet people, I'm kind of working on this. I'm writing a lot now, so this is something I'm writing. They can serve as either windows or mirrors
Hmm.
for you in your life. They will either reflect back to you what you believe about yourself and about them, or they will serve as an opening into something deeper, into a window into God. It's because everyone is this I am presence expressing as this one thing. So it is you can either see their authentic self, their pure essence of being, or they can reflect back to you which is God, right? Or they can reflect back to you what you're afraid of,
Mm.
what your judgments are about
Wow.
them or yourself or the world. And so there's another thing I'd like to share with you. So all of these, do you know what the largest organism on the planet is by any chance? I think I
I
shared
do
this.
because I'm a freak about trees and I'm
Okay, so
involved
you
with
know exactly what I'm
Archangel
going to say.
Ancient Tree Archive, and I've
Mhm.
actually known this fact for probably 15 or 20 years. But yes, but you go ahead and tell.
Okay. Well, maybe your audience will enjoy this. So the largest organism, it seems like we'd get along really well. We
I
would be
know.
good. We would be great friends. So the largest organism is a grove of aspen trees in Colorado. And they, if you walk around in the forest, you see, and bamboo acts the same way. There are other organisms that work this way. So the aspens, you walk around in the forest, you see, there's all these different trees, right? There's a tree, there's a tree, you see all these different trees. But they've done some studies on it. And as it turns out, if you dig down into the root system, not only do the roots intertwine, it's actually only one tree. It is one tree expressing itself in countless different ways at one time. Now, the redwoods, what's different about them is that they're not actually one tree. They're actually a bunch of different trees that have just grown together and their roots intertwine. But what's unique about the aspens is it's actually one tree, and it has a name. They've given it a name. Since you're a tree fanatic, do you know the name?
I do not know the name of what they call the one.
The
No.
the name of the asp is called Pandu. Pandu, like panda, but it's Pandu. Isn't that cool?
That's very cool.
Um, so in each of us are like individual expressions of this one I am, this one tree expressing itself in countless ways at one time.
You had
And
another expression that you used that I also loved. Will you talk about your wave example?
so imagine you're standing at the ocean, or take the ocean as an example, and imagine one day you have this vast ocean, you know, endless water, infinite water. One day, a wave rises on that ocean. It travels across the surface of the ocean, and one day it crashes on the shore of that ocean. But the so when the wave arose on the ocean, we'd call that a birth. When it travels across the ocean, we'd call that a life. And when it crashes on the shore, we would call that a death. Now imagine that you are that wave. Like you were that wave, and you have all these other wave friends, right? And all these individual waves, right? And you're having a great time. And one day you see this shore coming up, and you say, "Oh, what is that?" And you ask your little wave friend, "What is that?" And your wave friend says, "Oh, that's the shore." And you say, "Well, what is the shore?" And they said, "That is where all waves go to die." And so you're freaking out. No, no, no. And so you're figuring out what to do because this is inevitable. You're going to hit this shore. You're going to die. You're not going to be anymore. And lo and behold, this enlightened wave comes by you, and he says, "Hey, buddy, what's going on? What's wrong?" And you say, "Oh, this shore's coming, and I'm gonna crash on the shore, and we're gonna die." The God realized wave says, "Oh, buddy, don't worry about that. That's fine. No, no. Have you heard of something called water?" And the wave says, "No, what is water?" So he tells them all about water, and he says, "Well, that's wonderful for water. Water's gonna, He says, "Well, the ocean is composed of water." And the wave says, "Huh?" And he says, "And you're composed of the ocean." And he says, "Huh?" And so he says, "You also entirely water. So you are that essence of being, that eternal aspect of existence. that only changes form. And you will not cease to be. It is impossible for you to cease to be, because this I am, water, will just change form, right? You'll come back around and you'll become another wave and you'll come back to the ocean, right? So is that kind of the story
Yeah,
you were talking about?
you can't take the wave out of the ocean, and you can't take
Right.
the ocean out of the wave.
Because they are both water. There is only water, right?
Which comes back to what you said in your near-death experience, that there was no difference between what you were and what you were experiencing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's another story, but it's the story of the White Room. Do you remember that story?
No, I
Okay.
haven't heard this one.
So I'd like you to imagine that there's a man, and he is in a white room. The room is entirely white. The walls are white, the ceiling's white, the floor is white, as well as the man is entirely white. Now, the man has always existed within the white room. Since his inception, he existed within the white room. So all he knows is white. How does the man know he is in a white room? This is a question for you.
Unless, I don't know, he wouldn't, because everything would be all the same.
Right, right. He does not know he is in a white room. So he does not know the sanctity of white, the beauty of white, the cleanliness of white, the purity of white, the holiness of white. He has no idea what that is. So, in order for him to understand what white is,
He needs a
he has
black
to
room.
experience what white is not.
Right.
So, we all come from the white room. Right now, we are experiencing what white is not.
Oh, I love this.
So, so that when we go back to the white room, we can more deeply appreciate what white is. Right? There's something else. There are a couple of other things that came to mind while I was talking about that. So, so that we come from holiness, sacredness, purity. But when we go back to it, we will return to it in a deeper way than from which we came, from which we came, right? And everything everything that we experience that is beautiful is an expression, or the reason we like beautiful things is because they are a reminder of our nature. So we don't like things that aren't beautiful, but things that are beautiful, our ability to perceive beauty in the world is an indication of our evolution in terms of being able to see God everywhere. And so there's a couple of words that came to mind there that I'd like to talk to you about as well. So I love words. So I'm a stickler for words. So there is so the word spirit. You've used that word before.
Of course.
So what does that word mean to you?
Spirit is, to me, the essence of how we exist when we are not in the human form.
Okay. All right. That's great. That's great. That's wonderful. That's a wonderful definition. It's beautiful. So the word spirit actually comes from the Latin roots, uh, spiritus, the word spiritus in Latin. Now, spiritus is the same root from where we get the word to inspire or to
Hmm.
expire. So,
Hmm.
spirit, or it's your respiration. Spirit is literally your breath, it's the breath of life. And in Genesis, and back to Christian scripture, right? It says that God breathed the breath of life into Adam. He breathed his spirit into Adam. That's what that means. So anything that breathes is by definition spiritual. Anything that breathes. The oceans breathe, trees breathe, people breathe, animals breathe. You know, anything that breathes is alive. And if it has spirit in it, it has life in it. So, so spirit, in fact, some of the most spiritual people I've ever met in my life have been atheists and agnostics, because what they experienced how they conducted their lives had nothing to do with what they believed. It had nothing to do with it. It had to do, what made them spiritual is how they lived their life. They were environmental activists, social rights activists, human rights activists, you know? And so anything that we do that is in promotion or expansion of life, what it means to be alive, is spiritual. So that is what spirit literally means, is it is that which is, so you said that which your definition was
The
that which
part of
we
us that
are, which
isn't
we're,
human, the
that
part of us
isn't,
that is not human.
that is not corporeal, right?
Right.
So
Not of the body.
I would go as far to say that it's even you in the body right now,
Because I'm breathing.
because you're breathing, because you are spirit. In fact, you don't have a spirit. You are a spirit.
Yes, I
You don't
definitely agree with
you
that.
don't have a soul. You are a soul.
Can
So
I ask
another,
questions about, I want to ask you a couple questions about your grandmother, if you don't mind.
oh sure.
What I would like to know.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get away from
Oh,
the
no,
topics.
no, that's great. No, this is
It's all
great.
connected
I
though.
love
So
this conversation. This is wonderful.
mhm,
I'm one of the most popular videos on my channel is the one where I talk about signs we receive from our passed away loved ones. You
mhm,
were so close to her, Zachary,
mhm.
and she transitioned, and you've had this ineffable near-death experience. How have you been able to connect with her since she passed away from the physical plane?
I have never been separate from her.
I love that you said that. Tell the audience why you say that.
So one of my favorite quotes is about grief. And that's one of my specialties with my graduate work and my line of work is grief. What is grief if not love persevering?
Beautiful.
So I see my grandmother every day, and every flower that I see her looking back at me, and every beautiful piece of music I hear her talking to me. Um, every time it's that I understood, I've come to understand, and this has been an intuitive knowledge that's kind of flowered as I've gotten older, that what she was, who she was, but the form following the function of what she was. The form passed away, but what she was my salvation. She saved my life. I call her my mother. She's my grandmother, my mother who is grand.
Mhm.
So I lost both of my parents when I was a kid. I grew up without parents. But so when she adopted me, when she took me in, it was her daughter who was my mother. My mom's still alive, and I have a relationship with her. But at 12, both of my parents were gone. My grandmother raised me. But I call her my mother who is grand. And she is the woman who taught me how to be a man. And I know I'm talking about a lot of different angles from it, but you ask how I see she's never left me, is that the love that she had for me isn't just expressed to me through her anymore. I understood that the profound unconditional love that she had for me is expressed through my relationship with everyone that I know.
Wow. Well, what a testament to her and a legacy to her love. I appreciate you sharing that. So, Zachary, you've done so many things. You have a TEDx talk that people can watch. How
Mhm.
else can people connect with you if they want to connect with you?
Well, I'm just now starting to build a infrastructure so that I can start communicating with people on a larger scale.
Great.
But so I'm starting a blog, and then
Okay.
I have an email address that I'm going to share with everyone.
Okay, I'll
Um,
put that in the show notes. How appropriate. You love words. You're doing a blog. That makes a lot of
yeah,
sense to me.
yeah, 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 and yeah, and so if anyone has any questions or concerns, critiques, judgments, I'm here. So Yeah. There's so much more I wanted to say, but I guess we only have an hour. So,
Well, so why don't you leave us with
mhm.
one last thought that you would like to share?
Okay, I will. I'll share with you another word.
Okay.
Uh, the word holy. Did I ask you about that word earlier? I don't think I
No,
did.
but I've heard you talk about this one.
Okay. Okay. So our life is the process of becoming who we are. And if you are going to become something, it's just like going to a destination, right? Your destination already exists. You just have to make the effort. You have to make the journey to get there. So there's space and there's time, and they exist simultaneously. I have two different dimensions of one reality, right? So in time, just like your destination in space already exists, and you just have to make the journey to get there, in time, who you already are, who the wholeness of your existence, your pure essence of being, the wholeness of what you really are, just like the perfection of David exists in the marble.
Hmm.
The wholeness of you, everything you are ever going to become exists now. The process of your getting there is your life. So, as I said, your life is the process of becoming who you are. Life is the process of realizing what you are, seeing what you are with your real eyes, realizing it, realizing it. So, so if you realize it, it's not something that's created. There's no effort that's made there. You are simply wiping the dust off the mirror so that you can see the reflection for what it really is. So the word holy comes from the Old English word halig. And that is the same root from where we get the word whole or complete. Now the opposite, so imagine here you have whole, so in eternity, which is up here, you have the holy, right? Which is wholeness that exists outside of time. There's no beginning, there's no end. It's complete and entire, right? But below this level here, you have time, right? And here, at this end, you would say that you have that which is whole, right? Comes from the root word halig. Now, the opposite of that which is whole is what? That which is separate, right? But in life, we would experience that separation in religious terms as sin, right?
Hmm.
So the word sin comes from I think the Greek word hamartia or something like that. But it means sin literally means it actually didn't come from religion at all. It came from archery. That's where the
I've
word
never
sin
heard that.
came from. So sin is actually an archery
Oh,
term.
I know what you're going to
And
say.
so if you sin, what that means is you have missed the mark. You've heard the phrase to miss the mark, right? So if you shoot an arrow and you miss the bullseye, you've sinned. That's what that means, right? So if you sin and you're trying to hit the bullseye, but you keep missing the mark, but you're trying to hit the target, then it's not something you should beat yourself up about. It's just an error that needs to be corrected. So the process of learning to eventually hit that mark, you have to go through a lot of sinning in this framework to get to be able to hit the mark. So sin, if approached in the right way, with the right intention, is a learning mechanism so that we can finally hit the bullseye. Now, at this end, you have separation. At this end, you have wholeness. Now, wholeness comes from the word halig. There's another word that connects these two realities, this place of separation and this place of wholeness. And the word that connects those two is the word healing. So the process of getting from the place of sickness, depression, darkness, separation, right? The process of getting from that place back to the place of holding is the process of healing. And just like another word I shared with you earlier tonight, alembic. This is the process of the alembic. This is the process of our life. This is getting from belief in this to knowing of this. So, the wholeness of existence is the ground of being that exists behind all things. And you think that's good enough to end with? I don't
That's
know.
great. I think it's great. How did you feel about it?
Good, good. I didn't feel
Good.
like it was a button, but
Oh,
maybe you can edit it in a nice way.
oh, that's perfect. Well,
Mhm.
I want to thank you so much, Zachary, because I can feel the passion in everything that you're doing. And
Mhm.
I feel like it's one of your missions to try and help people wake up to the power of who they are and to understand before they take their last breath here and transition into the next that they don't truly die. So, thank you for everything that you are doing to help wake up the collective consciousness. It is so greatly needed right now.
Well, great. Well, thanks for having me on. It's been a pleasure meeting you.
It's been a pleasure meeting you too. And thank you so much to everybody for watching. Next up, check out this playlist of other NDE interviews. Please like and subscribe. It really helps this channel to grow so I can bring you more content. Thank you for watching. I'm so glad you're here.